Hi everybody! Hi Tamal! So we have a theory about Tyrion, right? Tyrion, he's been through a lot.
Yeah.
It was a joke, became the hand of the king, saved the city, didn't get any credit,
He's a dwarf.
got almost executed by his dad for being a dwarf. And afterwards he was in exile,
Yeah.
but now it seems he's on his way up.
Yeah, according to the last season, is now the end of the end of the queen for Daenerys.
Right.
So he's like in a good position.
Right. And in the books, he's about to join
Yeah,
Daenerys and he's also in a high place.
Yeah,
Right.
in the books, he's manipulating himself.
Up the ladder.
Yeah.
So where is Tyrion's story going that people want to know, they demand to know?
Well, at first we thought maybe he will finish like a new hand of the queen, king, whoever wins the throne.
But this time appreciated.
Yeah, we're not buying into the theory that he will be like a dragon rider or
Right.
maybe, but it's not that important to his end game.
Right.
He's not like a mythical figure or whatever.
Right. He's a political person.
He's a political person.
He's always looking at the different political structures out there.
Very observant, very smart, very sensitive. And he's now in a position that is also very cynical towards the
Right.
world.
But
So
he does have a good sense of history.
it feels like he has a bird's eye view, like to see the processes, to learning from history. He's very bookish. More to that, the books are his weapons.
Right, he says so.
He said so. Like this is his sword. Like to
Right.
learn from history, to be, to be close to history, close to books. This is his weapon. This is his
Okay.
main weapon. And at first,
But he does want to rule, not only to talk about it.
according to the show, he was like, "Yeah, I like the game." I'm
Oh.
not sure it's part of his real character like he wants to do. I think he more wants to be accepted. He wants to be loved.
Okay.
And
And does that remind you of anyone in history that he might be inspired from?
well, at first, in last season, we called him like this sort of an anti-Machiavellian figure.
In what way, anti? Like
Not anti-Machiavelli, but anti-Machiavellian. In a way that being Machiavellian is like morals in politics. Morals should not play a part, but it's very important to be viewed as a moral person.
Okay. And Tyrion?
And Tyrion is like the anti of that
Right.
sense because he's
Bizarro Machiavelli.
yeah, he's trying to be moral. At least morality does play a
Right.
part in his decisions.
Right.
But he's viewed as this
As a monster.
schemer, monster behind the scenes, and it's already, according to the show, the last season, it's already been played out in plays.
Right, in Bravos.
Yeah,
right.
it's like the mainstream view of Tyrion is already set with like he's this
Right.
behind the scenes schemer, Machiavellian type.
Evil person.
It's time to see if truth they told who said Tywin Lannister shit's gold.
You beast!
But now maybe he's an anti-Machiavellian figure, but maybe his historical inspiration could be like Machiavelli himself, the
Okay.
character himself, because Machiavelli himself is also sort of an anti-Machiavellian because
Right.
he wasn't
In
a
his
bad
personal
guy.
life.
Yeah, he wasn't a bad guy necessarily.
Right. And people now view him as a bad guy.
Yeah, it's synonymous with scheming and betrayals and
Right.
cruelty.
Right. Because he wrote a very famous book.
Machiavelli was a prominent political figure in Florence, but with
1600s?
in the 1600s, but a lot of turmoils during that period. He basically bet on the wrong team.
Right. There were two dueling families for
Yeah,
domination.
and when the Medicis came back to power, they, sent him to exile. And he wrote The Prince
Okay.
basically as a job application
How so?
to the Medicis.
Ah.
He says to the glorious Medici, this is a guide for ruling and stuff like that.
And what's in the guide?
Is basically creating, maybe he's like the grandfather of modern political science.
Right.
George R. R. Martin echoes this view when he says in a lot of interviews that
Right.
being good is not necessarily being a good ruler.
Right.
And even in one documentary I saw about Machiavelli, I think they shot it last year or 2 years ago.
Okay.
George R. R. Martin appears as one of the
Really?
interviewers there. That they interviewed George R. R. Martin
To talk about Machiavelli.
to talk about Machiavelli. Obviously, George R. R. Martin knows a lot about Machiavelli, and obviously he incorporated a lot of his Machiavelli tips in his writings, or
Right.
or at least Machiavelli plays a big part of how George R. Martin views politics.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
like a realpolitik, cruel, whatever.
Right. And it's not necessarily evil, because people think that Machiavelli was an evil dude.
No.
But it wasn't about you have to do bad things. Just
No.
how can you be effective and stay in power?
And the prince ruined Machiavelli's reputation for prosperity, but Machiavelli himself was a Republican. He wasn't like, oh, we need one king that will kill all his enemies. In
Right.
his own personal views, he was more towards like a Republican and, a more inclusive form of government. So he is also like an anti-Machiavellian himself, because his
Right.
reputation is ruined, even though he was, trying to
Right. Right.
do good, let's say.
Okay, so how do you think that those similarities between Tyrion and Machiavelli will play out in the story for Tyrion? What does that mean for him? If he's not going to be hand of the queen and rule?
Yeah, at first we thought maybe it will be hand of the king or something like that, of the queen, but he already was hand of the king.
Right. And it was a good one.
Yeah, it was a good one.
So,
So,
again-
in an end game, maybe it's like repeating itself.
Right, and that's not something that he likes to do. He likes to go to the essence of the character and take them to another place. But if he was already there, then it's not that
yeah, and it's
compelling.
not bittersweet as well.
It's sweet, sweet.
It's sweet.
Everybody's rooting for him, right? He's like almost maybe the most favorite character of the show watchers and
Yeah.
the book readers.
And if we take Daenerys out of the equation, Daenerys likes him, but we think maybe he will betray her or she will lose. We don't think she will become a queen.
Right.
So what will be the fate of Tyrion? He's hated. He's very, very hated. He's like a poison,
Right.
Every regime that will have Tyrion at its side
Right.
is poisonous regimes, like bringing
Right.
back Rasputin or something like that, or Dick Cheney.
Right. He's toxic politically.
Yeah, he's toxic, exactly. So I could see Tyrion, his arc, is coming from the books back to the books,
From being bookish,
from being bookish to being bookish, and
not ruling.
not ruling, but being exiled to one of the city-states, maybe, out of Westeros.
Ooh,
and
like Machiavelli.
like Machiavelli, and during this exile, the sweet part of the bittersweet will be that he's the one who will be remembered. Maybe not for the right reason, but he will write maybe a book called The Monarch, or how to, maybe he will write to Sansa or whatever, take me back. I'm like maybe. But
Okay.
it's very interesting. Machiavelli himself shares with us, with the readers, that he was depressed in exile, but every night he came back home, sat in his room in front of the fireplace, and was surrounded by his friends.
His friends.
And his friends are like the historians and philosophers of ancient times. And Tyrion is introduced to this is not only my sword, not only my weapons, but the maesters of the past, the historians of the past, the
Right.
philosophers, whatever, the myth.
Right.
These are my true friends. I mean, they will accept me.
I'd like to have my own vineyard, make my own wine. The imp's delight. Only my close friends could drink it.
So Machiavelli wasn't acknowledged during his day, but he is acknowledged now, and Tyrion cannot be acknowledged now because everybody hates him, but maybe 100, 200 years, 500 years from now, when everybody's going to read his book, because to know the Medicis, you have to be really into Italian history. But to know Machiavelli, you just have to have a BA in history or political sciences.
Or not even that. Tyrionism can be synonymous with being a schemer and smart. So that will be like his win.
Right.
It's sort of his win. Okay, I'm not around in the party anymore, but what will survive is me telling prosperity, telling future generations how to be powerful.
And maybe 500 years after the story, people will study his book, and teachers of history will say, Tyrion is not an evil dude. He just wanted to be effective.
And a man of his time.
A man of his time, right?
So you didn't want him at the council. You'll get him in the history books.
That's kind of a historical an Israeli historical reference.
Like Ariel Sharon, they said about Ariel Sharon.
He was a general.
And he was a general. They say about him, you didn't want him as a chief of staff of the army. You got him as defense minister.
Right.
You didn't want him as a defense minister. You got him as a prime minister.
Right.
So you didn't want Tyrion as your advisor. You'll get Tyrion throwing shade on you, but for prosperity.
Right, and I think the way that it will play out, maybe Tyrion will do something really, really horrible before the end in order to secure, we think, Sansa's reign. And maybe he will take the fall. He will be kind of like a Dark Knight, like at the end of the Dark Knight when he says, Batman says, if Gotham needs a bad guy, I'll be the bad guy. So maybe he will take the exile and say, okay, blame the horrible shit that happened, the bitter part of the ending, blame it on me. I'll go to exile, and then go back and say, Sansa, please take me back. And she will say, nah,
That could be a nice end to his arc.
I like it. I like this theory. It's a good theory. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You should definitely mention in the comments. If you want to support our channel, you can go to patreon.com/GOT Academy, pledge any amount, get access to extra content, extra videos, and also some other perks. And also you can support us by purchasing a cup, a mug, or a shirt. The links are also in the description. Subscribe to get all our videos, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody!